Thinking about renting out a property? Here's a question. Should you furnish it or leave it empty? Now, you might think this is just a minor decision, but it could actually make or break your cash flow. If you don't run the numbers properly, furnishing a rental could leave you with a higher rent, but also more expenses, more turnover, and more headaches. Furnishing a rental property sounds like an easy way to make extra cash, but it's not that simple. You need to weigh the upfront costs, tenant demand, and how long it'll take you to recoup your investment. Make the wrong choice, and you could be stuck with a unit sitting vacant while you pay out of pocket for furniture, storage, and unexpected damage. Let's break down the pros and cons of furnished versus unfurnished rentals so you can make the right decision before you buy or before you list your next rental. So I had a client who decided to furnish a rental. And I mean, I hear this all the time. So most of the time, and if you're listening to this, please don't be insulted. Most investors that come to us that want to furnish their property, the biggest reason is not because they wanted to have it as a furnished rental and they bought all this furniture. It's because they're living in it and they don't know what to do with the furniture. Okay, so typical conversation is, okay, well, are you going to be renting it furnished or unfurnished? And the investor says, oh, I'm thinking of renting it furnished. Okay, well, why is that? Well, I think I can get more rent. Okay, that's fine. But why else? Well, it's just I tried selling my furniture and it's such a big deal and I'm moving to a different city and I just don't have time. So I thought I'd just leave the furniture. That's very typical versus the educated investor that comes in and they purposely want to, buy furniture. They're going to go to IKEA. They're going to, furnish it properly, I guess. But the thing is, they think they're going to get an extra couple $100, a few $100 a month. But what didn't they account for? The fact that the furnished rentals attract short-term tenants, which means higher turnover, more cleaning, and months of lost rent. By the time they did the math, I'm talking about my clients now, they realized they'd have to make more money. They would have made more money if they had kept it unfurnished, okay? So what's the difference between furnished and unfurnished rentals? Furnished rentals, the unit comes technically move-in ready. Beds, tables, couches, and sometimes kitchenware and linens. What I'm talking about there is, maybe this is just a term I use, I call it hard furnished versus fully furnished with soft furnishings. So to me, hard furnishings, right? For those of you on Spotify, I just did a really bad dad joke and tapped my head. Hard furnishings. The unit comes move-in ready. Beds, tables, couches, okay? When we're talking about soft furnishings, I would still consider kitchenware, plates, cutlery, forks, napkins, cups, cookware, kettle. I mean, there's so many things that microwave that you have to have. And then what else for fully furnished rentals? Soft furnishings, linen, pillows, blankets, comforters. Again, think of a short-term rental, and that's what a furnished rental normally comes with if you're talking the whole kit and caboodle there, okay? Unfurnished rentals, tenant brings their own furniture. So the landlord only has to provide the basics like appliances, fridge, stove, and sometimes washer and dryer. You know me, I like to do pros and cons. So let's do the pros and cons of furnished rentals. Pros, higher rent. You can typically charge a lot more for a furnished rental since you're providing the extra value. Okay? It attracts short-term tenants, which is great for corporate renters, students, or people in transition who don't want to buy furniture. Number 3, it can be a good strategy in a high-demand area. So if you're in a market where short-term or executive rentals are in demand, furnishing it might be worth it. Now let's talk about cons. Cons is higher upfront costs. We're not talking about anything except for you need to buy furniture, the decor. Did we mention pictures and wall hangings, vases, side tables, lamps, kitchen essentials? I mean, you could, unless you're furnishing your house or you're leaving your furniture there, and even then you're normally not leaving everything, you're probably still going to have to pay $5,000 for incidentals. A 2-3 bedroom house, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. Okay, divide that by 12, and what are you talking about? $2,000-$3,000 a month, and that's just for 1 year. And who knows if the damage and everything else of that furniture or things go missing, you've started out with 8 plates, and now, 2 tenants later, you've got 5 or 6. It does make a difference. More maintenance. Okay, you're responsible for the wear and tear on that furniture. I just mentioned, replacing missing items, but what about the broken items or their outdated items? Okay, you can't hold the tenant, well, you can try to hold the tenant responsible for everything, but the whole point is you are introducing an extra element of risk in there. Okay, another disadvantage, smaller tenant pool. And this is the biggest thing for me. Okay, most long-term renters, again, if you think about the last 5 or 10 people that you helped move, how many didn't have furniture? I think they all do. I think most long-term tenants and renters already have furniture, which means fewer people are looking for a furnished unit. Okay, and if fewer people are looking, then how long is it going to take you? That means higher turnover and vacancy. So the tenants who need furnished places also are short-term renters, which means more frequent turnovers and potential vacancy loss. As an example, if you are going to have a tenant who, I don't know, they need a furnished rental. Maybe they're an executive that came from another province or state and they're scoping out the market, or before they want to buy a house and they want to move their family over. Great. Okay. But again, I just said 3 or 4 months. Maybe it's a family who are moving out of an apartment and they need some place for 3 or 4 months in transition because their house isn't built yet. Again, 3 or 4 months. You see there's a pattern here. Maybe there's somebody who has just separated from their partner. Okay, 1, 2 bedroom, whatever it is, and they need a long-term furnished rental. Okay, fine. But how many people are in that situation versus your typical July, August families moving, expanding, wanting to get a new rental property in a different neighborhood because the children are going to a different school? That's regular landlord tenant, I guess, property management, trying to find somebody who can really take these furnished rentals and stay a long time. I haven't seen it. When you calculate the number of vacancy losses you have, okay, and do this as an exercise. Let's say that you have a full-time renter at $1,500 of rent, okay, that stays for 3 years, and you have a long, well, I'll call it medium term, anyways, a furnished rental, okay, and it's vacating every 5-6 months with a 1-month vacancy. Now, you can pretend that maybe you're getting $2,000 for that furnished rental, so that's a lot of money, $500 a month. But over those 3 years, you've had, I don't know, 2-3 vacant months throughout the year. So now those 3 months at $2,000, that's $6,000 a year. And after 3 years, that's $18,000. So at best, you might be even with the long-term rental. At worst, you might be losing money. And what's easier? Okay, you've had one set of tenants there for the entire 3 years. It's a family, they're probably going to stay longer, and you haven't had to advertise, you haven't had to do any repairs. I'm talking turnover vacancy repairs, and you haven't had to do, 6, 8, 10, 12 move-ins and move-outs. Okay. Now, pros and cons. Unfurnished rentals I'm talking about here. Pros, longer tenancies. Unfurnished rentals attract tenants looking for stability, meaning fewer turnovers. Another pro, lower maintenance costs. You don't have to repair or replace furniture. A larger tenant pool. Most renters, as I said, are looking for unfurnished spaces, making it easier to find a tenant. But there are cons. One of it, I said, is lower rent. Since you're not providing furnishings, you can't charge as much as you would for a furnished rental. Less appealing to short-term rentals. So if you're in a market that attracts a lot of short-term tenants, they might prefer a furnished option. Okay, maybe it's an oil and gas town. Maybe there's a lot of student housing where students come in for 8 months and they want to take off in the summer. They don't want to be trucking around and storing their furniture. So I think the lesson there is you really have to, it's situational. Obviously, I sound biased after my 25 years in property management, because I know as a property manager, hands down, it's easier to rent out an unfurnished property. But again, in an oil and gas town, which I just found out in Fort McMurray, Alberta, 15% vacancy, it actually is about 50-50. We have a lot of people asking for furnished properties because of the way that economy works. So there's no right or wrong answer. I think the lesson here is crunch the numbers, okay? Does furnishing it, paying that 5, 10, 15, 25, $30,000 actually pay off, right? If you do some quick math, you can rent out, again, I'm probably repeating myself, but $1,500 and a furnished one could be $2,000, $500 extra a month. Then you factor in the vacancy, okay? Furniture costs on top of all of that, again, $20,000, even $8,000. How long is it going to take when you amortize that compared to a regular unfurnished rental to break even? And that's assuming nothing gets damaged or needs replacing. So if you're an investor, again, you're thinking about furnishing your rental, who should consider furnished rental? Well, they're going to work in these situations, short-term or corporate rentals. And again, that depends on your market. So if it has high demand for short-term stays, business travelers, or executive relocations, that's great. Even military. Luxury or high-end rentals also works for short-term or corporate rentals. High-income tenants may prefer the convenience of a fully furnished home. Okay, maybe they have 2 or 3, I'm talking high net worth people. Maybe you're in a city where somebody wants a fully furnished home and they just want to pay you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in rent. Professional sports teams and their, hockey, NFL, NHL, basketball, football, here in Canada as well, CFL. I've seen this where, the players come in, they want a fully furnished condo, home, whatever it is, because their home is in another state or province. If your property is unique, maybe your rental is in a high demand area where tenants expect a furnished option, like near universities, business hubs, that also might work. There could be a situation, this is the one I mentioned at the very beginning, where you already had the furniture there and maybe you don't have to buy anything else and you want to maximize the situation. Or maybe you're on sabbatical somewhere and you're going to go away for 2 or 3 years and you want to come back and you don't want to sell the furniture or put it into storage because it's your furniture. You're intending on coming back. So every situation is different. Although that last one, if you've got your grandmother's armoire or any kind of antiques, would caution you to leave that to tenants because sometimes they can be very hard on furniture that's not theirs. Maybe you had a short-term rental and you have it fully furnished, and now because of NIMBY, not in my backyard, or any other kind of regulations, it's no longer allowed, but you don't want to sell the furniture, and maybe you can turn it into a medium-term furnished rental, right? Because a lot of again, go back a couple episodes and listen to or watch the short-term rental episode that I had there, but I did speak about that, where a lot of these regulations that are coming down the pipe are for 30 days or less. So if you have a furnished rental, you might be able to convert it into a long-term or medium-term furnished rental as well. But for most landlords, unfurnished rentals make the most sense. They attract long-term tenants, they reduce maintenance headaches, and they provide steady, predictable income. Okay, so in summary, furnished rentals might sound like a great way to boost rent, but they come with added costs, more turnover, and a smaller tenant pool. Unfurnished rentals, on the other hand, attract long-term tenants and offer a more predictable cash flow. So before making a decision, crunch the numbers, think about your target tenant, because what works for one investor might not work for another. So if you want to know how to maximize your rental income without making costly mistakes, click the link in the show notes below to join our community. We have a ton of experienced landlords sharing ideas. So whether you're thinking about purchasing your first rental, you have a question about a tenant issue, or you want to watch my journey into multifamily, we've got you covered. Thanks for watching today.